Hi everyone, Helen Blunden here. Hope you're happy, healthy and well. Today it's time for a new book review, and today I've thought long and hard whether I should do a review of this book simply because there are so many booktubers out there who do the book way more justice than I would do it. So if you want to step off and do something else, go right ahead. I thought long and hard about this book and how I should approach it, simply because there is a lot of symbols, symbology, themes in this book. But when I come down to it, I'm going to actually talk about why I stuck with it and what an impact it made on me. The book I'm talking about, of course, is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. She wrote this book in 1927 and she drew upon the experiences of her growing up. The book itself, there's not much of a plot to it. If you're expecting a very, easy plot to follow, a good storyline, really the storyline is all about a family, the Ramsay family, who own a holiday house in the Isle of Skye, where they invite guests to that holiday house. And there's a lighthouse that shines light on this house, and that they've never been to the lighthouse. And in the first third of the book, all they're doing is talking with their guests as to whether they're going to the lighthouse tomorrow, but it could rain. That's pretty much it. The second third of the book is about what happens to the characters in the interim of the 10 years of the third part, where 10 years later, where some of the characters gather talking, hey, should we go to the lighthouse? They end up going, but it's a very slow movement. So if you're thinking about, hey, I'm going to read this very quickly, I'm going to enjoy it, this might not be the book for you. Now you might be thinking, oh my God, I love the book. What is she talking about? Wait. I started reading this book and initially I thought, what am I reading? I couldn't get into it. It's written in such a way that it's a very different style to what I've normally read. And it's deliberately done that way because in the 1920s, the group that Virginia Woolf was part of were trying to actually break conventions with how they were writing. And she's certainly done that. It blew me away because it's written in such a different format to what I'm normally used to. So around the 40-page mark, I started to get into it. Why? Because as I kept reading it, I kind of cottoned onto the idea of what she was doing. Now, let me explain. I know in various cities around the world, there's what's known as these Loom exhibitions. You may have gone to one. There's one in Melbourne called the Loom Van Gogh exhibition, where you go into this room and all along around the four walls, the ceilings and the floors, there's the paintwork, the beautiful art of Van Gogh that comes alive. And they've animated the pictures and there's a story. And then you are immersed in these artworks and you're watching the artworks move in front of you. You can go up to a wall and just see smudges of paint. But then when you walk away, you see a beautiful scene of beautiful flowers unfolding in front of you and you are totally immersed into the artwork. Now, picture the same, but in writing format. And that's what Virginia Woolf has done here. Originally, I was reading this book and I simply couldn't get into it. Why? Because what she's done is usually when we read from a character's point of view and we stick with that character throughout the entire book. But what she's done in this specific book is that as you read, you take on multiple characters, not all in the one go. Obviously, you're one character, then you read some sentences and then bang, you're jumping into someone else's mind and the other character, and then you read ahead, bang, you're into the third character, and you're getting these different viewpoints. And it's kind of like, it's very meta in the sense that if you have a scene of a room with a window and Mr. Ramsay's standing at the window and Mrs. Ramsay's sitting down with her son, her beloved son beside her, we get this image where we are reading what they're thinking about the situation. But what comes out externally when the characters are talking to each other, it's very surface level. Think of the niceties of how the Downton Abbey people talk to each other around the dining table. It's all very surfacey. But then underneath, they're thinking, what they're seeing, and we're actually in their heads, and we jump from one character to the next. But on the outside, they're talking about whether they're going to go to the lighthouse tomorrow. But on the inside, there's all this turmoil, hate, happiness, rage, uncertainty, scorn, jealousy, pride, fear. And we're reading that, and it just comes alive. The writing is so compelling, and that's why I stuck with the book. Originally, I was thinking I was going to leave it aside. Around the 40-page mark, I couldn't do it. But I continued reading simply because I was really intrigued. I was intrigued to read more because of her beautiful writing. I don't know how someone is so talented enough to be able to write this way. I mean, I wrote a short piece of fiction about a few weeks ago, 3,000 words. And as I read it, it was so mechanical, so boring as batshit, because I couldn't express the words to create pictures in my head that makes the bloody thing come alive. But Virginia Woolf, my God, what a talent when I read this book. It was really interesting because sometimes my husband likes to read to me because he likes putting on characters' voices. And he goes, I'll read Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse to you, Helen. And I sat back and I went, go ahead. I'd like to hear this, because I wanted to actually hear him read this book out loud. And as he was reading it out loud, he couldn't do it. After a while, he had to stop. Why? Because he was jumping from one character to the next. He was doing the voice of Mrs. Ramsay, and then all of a sudden he's talking. And I said, that's not Mrs. Ramsay's character. It's someone else's now. And he was getting confused. He goes, I don't know how you can read this. I thought it was brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I loved it. And I think it is something that I'm going to read again in the future, because I don't think I took enough out of the first reading. The second part of the novel is also beautiful, and it's the one that made the most impact, although the scene at the dining table, oh my God, you have got to read this scene at the dining table. It was brilliant as she jumped over the different protagonists, and how Lily, one of the young women, would move her hand and her cup over the tablecloth that was covered with flowers, and it would just come alive in my head. You could actually picture what these characters were truly thinking about while they were talking about something really mundane. It was fascinating. The second part of the book was, again, something different, where Virginia Woolf actually quickly, within 2-3 pages, basically rattled off what happened to the characters in the interim time between the first part and the third part, which is a span of 10 years. So we quickly learned that Mrs. Ramsay had died. Someone else had died. And you think, whoa, hang on a second. Usually writers, that would be the entire plot line, but she just rattled it off. This is what happened. So we were left with, okay, what have we got here? We've got the characters are out, but at the same time, there's this house. And the other thing I found about the house is, in the second part of the book, the house came alive through time. It was kind of like reading an animated sequence where there's an old house that has deteriorated over the years. Ivory's growing in the cracks. It's become dusty. Cobwebs are growing. We're seeing it get older. We're reading it getting older. It becomes alive until the lady, the staff member McNabb comes in singing along and cleaning the house up, getting the house ready for the people to come back to it 10 years later. Oh my God, what a book. What a book. There is so much symbology and themes in this book. So I would recommend that you check out some of the other YouTubers out there who have really delved into the symbols of the book. But what I wanted to share here was my own experience of this book and how beautiful it was to be part of something that it was a real true reading experience for me. Even though I cannot believe that I wanted to put it down and not continue on with it. I loved this book. I loved it. It was beautiful. It made me think about my own life. In some way, I felt as if I was the Mrs. Ramsey character. It taught me the fact that you have one life. You have one life. Don't let idiots around you tell you that you can't do something or that they shoot your confidence down in some way. That you have one life, that you are free to carry on and do the thing that you love, because you can do anything. Oh, it was a brilliant book.